Hello and welcome to this second video in the game development series. If you find this video informative or helpful, please help support the website by going to www.maticknows.com and clicking on the PayPal donate button. Okay, in this video we'll be adding an error handler to our existing code. So as we see here, in our previous code we created the main function, and currently our game code doesn't contain anything. So in this video we'll be adding a class which we'll be using all the way throughout the game engine to handle all the error messages that may be generated during our development. Okay, so to start, let's go into the project here in Explorer, and we'll create a new folder and call it error handler, and that's where our new code is going to go sit. So the same thing, under source files, we're going to create a new folder and call it error handler, and we're going to have a header file as well, so just going to go create an error handler here as well. And we need to create two new files, .cpp and a .h, and we want to make sure we put them in the right spot as well. Error handler, click OK. Just drag that over, and we'll repeat that for the .h. And put it in the right folder. Okay. In the errorhandler.h file, I created, again, if not defined, define errorhandler _h and then define it. And then we have an end if. And in the classes section here, we're going to add our error handler class. So you see, there's a constructor that takes a file name, and it has an optional second parameter, on or off. Has a virtual destructor, and it has a function call here, setError, which we use to set our error message, which is saved in memory. And then we have two function calls to return the error code and the error message, which has been previously set. This function, this class only stores one error message. However, all error messages which are generated are logged to a file, and you'll see how that works in a minute when we go into the .cpp. There's also a function called here, showErrorMessage, which displays the currently saved error message in this class. And the private members, which we have, is a variable here for the file name, a variable for the message, and an error code here, which is just an ID number. Oh yes, and we have a boolean true or false to tell us whether we want to log everything to a file or not. Now, our error code here isn't defined because this is a custom structure. So we're going to define it, and it's actually defined as an enumeration. So if we look here, we see I've set a bunch of variable names here, EC for error code, and then underscore some certain name. First one is equal to 0, which means that this value, the name here is associated with 0, and then the one after is basically 0 plus 1 plus 2 and so on. So the unknown is 1, error is 2, and so on, as you can see. And the error codes, I just grouped them in sort of general terms. We have generic error codes at the top, memory problems, Windows problems, DirectX, OpenGL, and game logic problems. Okay, you'll see how I use these in a minute when we go back into the main and I demonstrate how these error codes work. Now let's go into the errorhandler.cpp and start writing the code. The first thing we have to do in the CPP file is make sure we include our stdafx.h file, which is a precompiled header. And we're also going to include the errorhandler.h, which is the definition for our class here. Now, one thing I just thought of that we also have to do is set up our project so that we'll be able to find these new files which we've just added. And we can do that by going under Game Engine here, going under Properties, and under the General tab. Previously here we added the include directories /_main. Well, we also have to now add /errorhandler. Okay. So the first thing we're going to add here is the constructor. And in the constructor, we take a file name, and we also have an optional value here for the bool. So we have a member variable called m_beyond. All our member variables have a m_ pre-appended to them, and we're just taking the value that's passed to us and saving it in our member variable. And the first thing that we do is we call our member function called setError, and we set that we're going to be using no error, and the error message is going to be no error. Then we check to see if the file name that was passed into us is null. If it is, we're going to default to create a log for our error messages and call it errorlog.txt. If this isn't null, then the user has passed something into there, and we check to see whether an extension has been associated with this file name or not. And the way that I check this is to see, first of all, is the file name greater than 4 characters? If it is, and the fourth last character is a dot, then I assume that you did pass something with an extension. So I just save the local member variable for the file name to be whatever you passed in. If this is false, then I assume that whatever you passed in didn't have an extension, so I add .txt to the end of the file name that was passed into us. Then I check this beyond flag that was passed into us through our function. If it's true, then this ends up being false, so we actually continue on. If it's false, then this executes to be true, and we actually exit the constructor and we don't do anything else. So by default, if we look under here, we see that beyond is set to true, which means that we do want to go and create a log file. And the way we do that is we first create a file pointer to the file name that we just created, and we decide we want to be writing to it in text format. And if we successfully created that file pointer, then I create a buffer here of a certain size and write to the file the date in month, day, year format. That's what this function here returns to us. And I just print that to the file, and then we finish with the constructor. So if you do have just the constructor, what should happen is it creates an error log file, either called this if you don't specify anything, or whatever you specified, and saves the current date to that file. The next function in our class is our destructor, and our destructor isn't very interesting because it doesn't do anything. So there's the code. Moving on, we have our setError function here. So we pass to it some error code, and then an error message, and then we have comma dot dot dot. Now what this does is it allows us to pass error messages with %d, %f variables into our setError, and those things are going to get parsed using this code here. And during that parsing, it saves all of the error messages into our local member variable here for our error message. We then take the error code that's passed to us, save it in our local variable as well, and again we check this this flag value here. If we are supposed to save things to a file, then we skip over this and we end up opening up that file which we created in the constructor, so we're appending to it now, and we write to it the error message which was just passed to us, and then we close the file immediately. The next two function calls are very simple, just get error code and get error message. They just return the error code value and the error message, so nothing too interesting there. And our last function in this class is called show error message, and what it is a big switch that checks for the error code, and depending on what the error code is, decides which of these error message boxes to display. So if it's no error, it's going to display a message box that says all OK at the title bar, and it just has a little information icon with a OK box. If it's a Windows error, then we show here it's a Windows error in the title, and then we have a icon error icon and we display the error message. So you can go through here and you can see for each case I just have a little bit different message, but it's basically the same thing, just a message box. And the default, if we pass to it an error code which isn't one of the ones here selected by the switches, then we just default to unknown message, and we have a little question mark icon and so on. Alright, so that's our error handler. Let's see if our code compiles, which I'm pretty sure it shouldn't, because we don't have certain includes for these functions here. So back we go into MSDN, and we type in here sprintf and see what it's looking for. If we scroll down, we see requirements. sprintf needs stdio.h. So back into the precompiled headers, and we need to go in here and add the stdio.h. Save that and try to build it now. Okay, well that's a little better. Now we see we're missing str date. So let's take this and paste it into here and see what's missing for this one. Well, here we need time.h. So again, back in the stdafx file, we're going to include time.h and try building it again. Okay, it looks okay. Now in our main, we don't use our error handler just yet because we haven't declared it here, so let's go and add it in. So we're going to create an error handler, and I'm just going to call it error handler with a small e, and for the constructor I'm going to pass null, and actually I'm not going to pass anything for the second one, like this. And I'll save it, and can't start, and I'll try to build it. Now it should give me some complaints, which it does, and it says it can't find this error handler class. Well, I can't find it because we haven't included it here in our main.cpp. So we have to go include error handler.h. And now when we build it, it should be okay. Alright. Now before I run this, I just want to show you one thing. Back in our Windows Explorer, we see we have our 4 files here and those 3 directories. Okay, so if we go and run the program, it ran and it finished. Now if we go back here, we see we have errorlog.txt. So that was created by that error handler constructor, and you see it has the current time and date. Well, we can go back here and start playing around with the error handler just a little bit. Let's say I wanted that error log to be just called log. So I can do this, and I'll click save, and I'll build it, and I'll run it. Well, now if we go under here, you'll see it has log.txt. Okay, that's fine. Well, what if I didn't want to call it log.txt? What if I want to call it log. I don't know, doc? Well, I can do that as well. And when I build it and run it, you see now I created log.doc. And by opening it, you should see that it has same information in it, and it does. Okay, so that's just a quick demonstration of how you use that error handler. One other thing I just want to show you is, I'll just change this back to text. The way we're going to be using it is like this. We'll go error handler, and then we'll set certain error codes into it, and we'll pass error codes into our set error function here. Well, the current error codes that we can use are defined in here. So let me just select one of these. I'll pick error code Windows, and the second parameter was the message. So under the message, I can say hello, and I'll just close that off. So that should save this error. And let's say I wanted to display that error as well. So I'll go show error message, and no parameters need to be passed. So let's run that. Has to build it. Okay, so now you see it displays here Windows error and the message is hello. Click OK and the program finishes. Well, I can change this error code to, I don't know, let's say game error and go hello 1 2 3. Oh, it didn't like the O, right. I forgot the EC underscore at the beginning there. Okay, let's run that. We see now the title here is game error hello 1 2 3. And say we didn't have an error message and we just display the error message this way. What should we see? Well, instead we see all's okay, no error, because that's what the constructor initialized our error message to display. So that seems okay. The one other thing I wanted to show you is, let's say we do set an error message and we run it. So we see the error message here. If we go back into our log, which, let's see here, which one are we using? Log.txt. Let me delete these other ones so I don't get confused. Okay, log.txt, you notice it also has that error message which was displayed to the screen. But if we're to have more than one error message, let's say we'll go error 1, then we'll say hello, and then we'll say bye. So we set 3 error messages and then we show the error message. If we run this, we only see the last one, bye, because only the last one gets saved before we show it. However, in this log, we see it did save all 3. So just something to remember. Everything gets saved to the log file, but only the last one gets displayed when you call show error message. Okay, so I'm just going to clean this up here and just get ready for the next video. And in the next video, we'll be starting to work with the actual game class, which will end up creating the window for our OpenGL game engine, as well as start setting other things up so that we can start processing 3D graphics and things like that. So, hope to see you again in the next video.